Right now, massive US B-52 Stratofortress bombers are touching down at an airbase in the United Kingdom. These are not defensive weapons. These are incredibly heavy, long-range bombers capable of carrying massive payloads. And moving a fleet of them into Europe puts them directly in striking distance of the Middle East. It is the loudest possible military signal that the United States is gearing up for a sustained, heavy escalation. But here is the craziest part about this entire situation. While the military is deploying its heaviest hitters to the edge of a war zone, Washington, D.C. is completely turning on itself. Usually, when a superpower enters a massive global conflict, the country unites behind one clear strategy. But right now, the American political system is completely fracturing from the inside out. Just hours ago, a sitting U.S. Congressman, Representative Ted Lieu, dropped an absolute bombshell on the public record. He flat out accused the President of the United States of using this entire war as a deliberate, bloody distraction. A calculated distraction to pull the public's attention away from the newly released Epstein files. Think about the gravity of that accusation for a second. While American forces are being pushed to the absolute brink of a major regional war, lawmakers are openly claiming that the entire operation is just a political smokescreen. It paints a terrifying picture of a superpower that is fighting a two-front war, one in the deserts of the Middle East and one right inside the halls of Congress. And while Washington is distracted by this massive domestic chaos, the reality on the ground overseas is spiraling out of control faster than anyone predicted. Israel's military just confirmed they launched heavy precision strikes deep inside Iranian territory. They are actively taking out government-linked infrastructure. And they specifically targeted what they described as a major IRGC drone headquarters. But this is no longer a one-way street, because almost simultaneously, warning sirens were blaring across central Israel. Reports are confirming that rockets fired from Lebanon are now impacting deeply within Israeli borders. We are watching an active, multi-front exchange of fire happening in real time. And the scale of this conflict is quite literally expanding by the hour. This is exactly the nightmare scenario that global security experts have been terrified of for months. A localized conflict that completely breaks containment and morphs into an uncontrollable regional war. And the absolute worst-case scenario is unfolding right in front of us. Because the leadership in Iran just underwent a massive, historic shift. And their very first move was not a call for a ceasefire or a diplomatic summit. It was a direct, terrifying threat aimed squarely at the global supply chain. Here's the thing about power vacuums. They never stay empty for long. Iran has officially cemented its brand new leadership structure. Mojtaba Khamenei has just formally stepped in to replace his father as the country's new supreme leader. And if anyone in Washington was hoping this transition would bring a softer, more diplomatic approach, they were completely, dangerously wrong. The military and political elite have fully pledged their allegiance to this new regime, which guarantees absolute, unbreakable continuity for their hardline military strategy. And their very first move on the geopolitical chessboard is nothing short of a mafia-style ultimatum. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps didn't bother scheduling a summit or drafting a treaty. Instead, they issued a direct, chilling warning to all their neighboring Gulf states. They essentially told countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE to put a leash on the United States. Because if the regional airstrikes targeting Iranian energy sites don't stop immediately, Iran is going to make sure the entire world pays the ultimate price at the pump. They are explicitly threatening to send the price of crude oil skyrocketing past $200 a barrel. And honestly, this isn't just empty rhetoric or political posturing. Global oil prices have already broken past the $100 mark just on the panic alone. But to understand how they can actually pull this off, you have to look at the map. Right at the edge of the region sits the Strait of Hormuz. It is arguably the most critical physical choke point for the entire global energy supply. Roughly 20% of the world's daily oil physically floats through that narrow strip of water. And it is not just oil, it is the physical natural gas that powers entire continents. If that waterway shuts down, the global logistics network goes into immediate cardiac arrest. And Iran's top security chief just went on the record with a terrifying promise. He stated that as long as this war with the US and Israel continues, security in the Strait of Hormuz simply cannot and will not be restored. They are holding the physical supply of global energy hostage to force a military de-escalation. Think about what that actually means for an ordinary American sitting at home right now. We aren't just talking about abstract foreign policy or distant geopolitical maneuvering. If that strait is choked off and crude actually hits $200 a barrel, the price of physical gasoline in your local town is going to absolutely explode. It would trigger a massive wave of inflation across every single physical good that requires shipping. Everything from groceries on the shelf to the delivery trucks dropping off packages would suddenly cost a fortune. Iran knows they don't need to defeat the US military in a head-to-head firefight. They just need to apply enough physical pressure to the global supply chain to make the economic pain unbearable. And that is exactly the asymmetric warfare strategy they are deploying right now. They are betting that the American public will demand an end to the war once it starts bankrupting them at the pump, because while this economic ticking time bomb is threatening everyday citizens, the actual financial cost of fighting this war is already bleeding the United States dry in real time. Let's talk about the actual cost of dropping these bombs, because the math is absolutely staggering. Right now, the United States is hemorrhaging cash to keep this military machine running. And we aren't talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about billions. Reports are coming out of Washington that are making even the most hawkish politicians completely sweat. Republican lawmakers are sounding a massive alarm regarding the Pentagon's daily burn rate. They are warning that the U.S. is currently spending close to $2 billion every single day on this escalating conflict. Think about that number for a second. $2 billion of American taxpayer money evaporating every 24 hours just to maintain these operations. To put this into perspective, we need to look at the official data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, or SIPRI. According to their latest verified numbers, the U.S. military budget hit an unprecedented $997 billion in 2024 alone. That is the highest military expenditure anywhere on the planet. In fact, America spends more on its military than the next 9 countries combined. And under the current administration, those numbers are about to get a whole lot bigger. President Trump has already announced a staggering new defense target. The goal is to push the U.S. military budget to an astronomical $1.5 trillion by the year 2027. So while everyday citizens are staring down the barrel of crushing inflation and $200 oil, the major defense contractors are experiencing an absolute financial gold rush. We're talking about industry giants like Lockheed Martin, RTX, and Northrop Grumman. According to SIPRI's top 100 list, these companies are reporting defense revenues well into the tens of billions, and their stock values are surging right alongside the rising geopolitical tensions. It is a brutal reality of modern warfare. The longer these missiles fly, the richer the defense industry gets, while the middle class picks up the tab. And Iran is absolutely aware of this massive domestic friction inside the United States. They are actively trying to exploit the growing anger of the American taxpayer. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, just released a highly calculated public statement. He completely bypassed the politicians and spoke directly to the American public. He explicitly stated that Iran has no desire to harm ordinary Americans. And he pointedly reminded everyone that the American people overwhelmingly voted to end involvement in costly foreign wars. It is a brilliant psychological play to divide the U.S. government from its own citizens. Why fight a superpower on the battlefield when you can just wait for their own taxpayers to pull the plug? And this strategy of financial exhaustion isn't just isolating the U.S. at home. It is fundamentally changing how America's closest allies are behaving on the global stage. Because the truth is, America's closest allies are watching this financial and military drain, and they are backing away. Even key NATO members are looking at this escalating powder keg and deciding they want absolutely nothing to do with it. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan just issued a massive reality check to the global community. He went on the record stating that his country's primary goal right now is simply to keep Turkey away from the fire. When a military powerhouse like Turkey publicly steps back from a regional crisis, it sends a chilling message to Washington. It means the United States is becoming increasingly isolated in a war that is expanding by the hour. And while America is burning $2 billion a day and alienating its own allies, its biggest global rivals are sitting back and watching the chaos unfold with a smile. Think about how this looks for Moscow or Beijing right now. Russia is watching the U.S. deplete its massive interceptor stockpiles and military budget in the Middle East, which means fewer resources, less money, and less political willpower to counter Russian influence anywhere else. Meanwhile, China gets to watch the United States exhaust itself financially and militarily, all while Beijing quietly secures its own supply chains and watches its geopolitical rival walk into a massive trap. This is no longer just a localized conflict over a few drone bases or radar installations. It has morphed into a massive shadow world war where the real victory goes to the countries that simply stay out of the crossfire. The United States has deployed B-52 bombers, aircraft carriers, and billions of dollars in hardware to project strength. But Iran has countered that physical firepower with a masterclass in economic and psychological warfare. They are threatening to choke off the world's oil, holding the global economy hostage. They are dividing the Gulf states, isolating Washington from its regional partners. And they are speaking directly to a frustrated American public that is entirely tired of footing the bill. So the real question isn't whether the U.S. military has the firepower to win a battle in the Middle East. The question is whether the American economy and the American taxpayer can survive the true cost of the war. And honestly, the math is not looking good. Let me know what you think about this massive escalation down in the comments. Do you think the US is walking right into an unwinnable economic trap? Drop your thoughts below, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next update.